Hey guys, thanks for coming. My name's Christian. I'm a technical account manager at Jam Software. I work on the East Coast. I work with SAR over at MIT. Maybe a few of you guys in the stands as well. SAR today is going to be talking to us about providing Casper Suite as a service in his environment and teach you guys about it. So I'm going to hand this off to SAR if I want to give him a warm welcome.
Good morning. Thank you for coming this morning. I know some of you had a pretty rough time getting out of bed because I've seen some of you party last night, so I truly appreciate you being here. Today we'll be talking about the journey of providing Casper Suite as a service. And before we go down this journey together, what I'd like to explain to you a bit is the environment that we work in, because it's a very unique environment, and in lots of ways, it made me choose certain path because of that environment. So when I talked about this environment, I work at MIT. I'm the team lead for IT deployment and maintenance. And MIT, for those of you who might not know, is located in Cambridge, Massachusetts. It's right across the river from Boston. And we have a lot of stuff going on in Cambridge. There's schools all over the place. There's a lot of research going on. There's a lot of startups. And part of the MIT campus is actually located in an area called Kendall Square. So what you see in front of you is a Lego replica of Kendall Square. And it's actually color-coded by the concentration of startups in that area. And it's definitely considered one of the densest and most established technology clusters in the world. So there's all this stuff going on. And one of my favorite quotes is from a guy called Tim Rowe, who's actually the founder of the Cambridge Innovation Center. And he says that you cannot walk down the street in Kendall Square without running into venture capitalists, Nobel laureates, or even startup CEOs. So it's all over the place. And that brings me to a story, because this actually happened to me. And so I was at this meetup. This is a building on campus. It's an awesome building. It's designed by, for those of you who kind of are a bit into architecture, it's Frank Gehry who designed the building. Very futuristic, super fancy. So anyways, I was at this meetup, sitting there waiting for the presentation to start, and this guy walks in. Looks very familiar. He doesn't sit down. He's standing in the corner. And it's one of those moments where you're looking at the guy, you kind of know him, you just can't figure out where from, who that person is. And he probably freaked out because I was just staring at him all this time. I was like, I know this guy. But he's kind of interacting with the presenter. He's chipping in a bit. And then at the end of the presentation, the speaker says, well, for those of you who don't know, this is Tim Berners-Lee. And the immediate thing that hit me was, wow, this is awesome. I love working at MIT. And then the second reaction was, thank goodness, because I don't have to think about this going home, because this is going to be in my mind all the time. For those of you who don't know, Tim Berners-Lee is actually the guy on the right. Now, for Al Gore fans, Tim Berners-Lee is the one who invented the World Wide Web and not Al Gore. So I am sorry to disappoint. But I say all this because when you're in that kind of environment, it's very inspiring. Again, you feel the energy, you feel the buzz, whether it's at MIT or Kendall or Harvard or any of that environment. And that was a big reason why you'll see throughout the presentation, I've made some choices based off of that. So the agenda for today is talking a bit about the challenges of a distributed environment, Casper version 9, and the introduction of sites, identifying machines and associating them to the correct site, and last but not least, Casper, APIs, Python, and automating some of the software deployments. So challenges of a distributed environment. How many of you in here work in higher education? Okay, that's almost half the room. So anyone who's worked in higher education or is currently working knows exactly what I'm talking about. And the best analogy I could think of is it's almost like central IT is the federal government, and then all the departments and colleges are the states. And some of those states are richer than others. They have more money, more funding, so they can hire their own IT folks. They can build their own infrastructure. Some of them have to rely on central IT to do their stuff. And another way to think about it, and this is actually what my boss always mentions, is it's serving multiple startups with different wants and needs. And that's the role of central IT in this distributed environment, and that's where the challenge comes in. To put it more concretely, this here is a distribution of Macs that we have across all the different departments on campus. The red nodes are the printers. I believe the blue nodes are the MacBook Pros, and the purple ones are the iMacs. So if you look in the middle here for RD, which is resource development, they have a lot of Macs. And at the time, we had Casper as central IT, and they wanted to use Casper to manage all those Macs. Well, it was version 8, there were no sites, we couldn't give them access to Casper because it just doesn't work, because once they have access, they're gonna have access to everything in Casper. So we kept on bugging. I think a lot of you in here probably kept on hammering Jamf about, can you please give us a solution so that we can actually delegate permission, have people manage their own thing. And Casper stepped it up. Jamf came up and said, here you are, this is Casper 9, you have sites, do whatever you need to do. So the problem came in is you really want to be careful what you wish for. Because now we had no excuse. Now we had people coming in and saying, hey, there's sites now, why aren't you offering Casper to us? We can just be a site. But the problem we ran into was who's who. So my team deploys machines all over campus, and we were imaging the machine, deploying it with the Casper client that was reporting back to the JSS. So when you look at the console, we had all those machines, but we didn't really know who the machines belonged to. But now we have sites and we want to offer it to all those different departments, but we can't really figure out what site this machine needs to go into. Part of the problem is we don't use any directory service for the Macs. So it's local accounts on the machines. They can be named whatever you can imagine. I've seen some weird names in there. The other issue was we all spoke different languages. Depending on who set up the machine, who knows what the machine was named, what the user account is, how it's set up. So instead of having this nice, organized factory workflow where everything went super smooth, it actually looked more like this, very chaotic. So now, how do I identify computers and associate them with the correct site? So we took some time, thought for a while. First idea we came up with, okay, well, let's use extension attributes. They're right there. We figured out the username from either Apple Mail or Microsoft Outlook, get the username, pop it up as an extension attribute, and then populate the user and location that way. Yeah, sort of. So you have to remember, we're MIT, so Apple Mail, Microsoft Outlook are not the only options we have. We have crazy users sometimes, so who knows what they're using on their machines, so it's no guarantee. And I believe the other issue we ran into at the time, and I don't know if this has changed recently, was if you're a delegate in Microsoft Outlook, there was no easy way to figure out who's the primary user of that account. So we might have 3, 4 different users in the extension attribute, and we wouldn't know who the machine belongs to. So the second idea we came up with, or before the second idea, the other issue with the extension attribute was, fine, if that works, we can get the username in there, but then you still have to go back manually into Casper, look up the extension attribute, and manually populate it in user and location. It's not ideal. So the second idea was personal certificate. The way things work at MIT is a lot of people, actually everyone has a personal certificate that they use to log into all the services we offer. So That was, in a way, a guarantee of probably 90% are going to have personal certificates. So if we can get the username out of that cert, we're good to go. So the second thing became, okay, how am I going to do this? Should I use just a plain old shell script, or do I go with Python? And this kind of, in a way, goes back to that environment that I was talking about. At the time, both my friend and I were kind of discussing, we were tired of just having to wait for a vendor or a solution to come out that we can deploy to solve the problem. It's like, why can we not solve our own problem? Why can we not learn some Python, get some coding experience, and do this on our own? So I was like, okay, I'm not going to do shell script. Maybe I'll learn Python and do it that way. So the trick was, I wanted to get the username and the computer name. What I wanted to do with the username is do an LDAP query on that username to get the full name, the department, the title, the phone number, and then I'll generate an XML file, and I upload that XML file to the right computer record in the JSS. And I ended up doing that using Python and the Casper APIs. And we eventually ended up reiterating over that script, because in the cases where we couldn't capture the username because someone didn't have a personal certificate, we started looking up the home folder username. Maybe they used the right name. We started looking up Apple Mail, so we kind of added a few cases. And right now, we ended up with all the computers being in the right site. That's fantastic. So that solves one problem. The other issue came into play was software updates and deployments. So we do thin imaging. And my team gets the machines out of the boxes. They install the Casper client, and that kind of launches a bunch of manual policy triggers that installs the software. Naturally, I don't want to deploy a machine to someone. They launch Firefox, and it's out of date. That's a crappy experience for the user. So how are we going to be able to keep Firefox, keep VLC Media Player, keep some of those freeware applications up to date? Because I didn't want to do this every single day. I mean, we all deal with Firefox, so you know how often that version changes. So the typical process of updating software is you find out about new software, and from some of you that I've talked to over the past couple of days, everyone seems to have a different method to do this. Some of you seem to decide on, okay, I have Friday afternoon is when I go in and check for all the updates and do that kind of work. Some of you maybe do it every other day. Some of you go to a few different websites and find out about this stuff. Anyways, you find out the new version, you download the new software, you upload the software to your distribution point through Casper Admin. You create or modify a policy depending how you do your work, deploy and test, and rinse and repeat. So it sounds like a clear algorithm to me. There has to be a way to automate it. And I was like a child with a new tool. I learned Python, so I'm going to go and use that same tool all over the place. So what I ended up doing was I created this thing called the Casper Automated Package Deployment. And I added the D at the end to make it kind of sound like a daemon. And I added the super fancy artwork. Very cool. So how does this work? So on the left side, you see the JSS. You see the policies there. On the right side, there's the VM that we use for testing. And then at the bottom on the right side is the terminal window. So in this case, we're just going to launch that script in the terminal window. And that initially is going to check for application updates. So this is going to go and look up. In this case, it saw that VLC is fine, but there's a new version of Firefox. So it downloads the new version of Firefox. And then the next step is it uploads that to Casper Admin and then creates a policy. So on your left side, you're going to see a policy pop up in the JSS. So there we go. The policy's there now. After that, it's time for testing. So we have this new version of Firefox. We need to deploy it. So we spin up that VM. It runs the Casper trigger, the Jamf policy trigger, to install that new version of software. It does the Jamf recon to update the inventory list in Casper for that specific machine. And at that point, it's going to launch the app to make sure that actually installed. So Firefox launches. It takes a screenshot and it sends the team and I an email saying, hey, I updated Firefox. This is a screenshot showing that it works. You're ready to go, whatever you want to do. So how does it really work? What I'm going to talk about is the external applications. And what I mean by external applications, it's mostly the freeware stuff that we deploy as part of our image. We do have a bit of a similar method for our internal applications, but it's kind of specific to our setup, so there's no point. But if anyone's interested, just catch me after this. We can sit down and talk, and I can easily show you how we're doing it. So we have this, what we call a controller. It's just a basic iMac sitting. It has VMware Fusion installed. It has a basic client prototype VM, which is a VM with a Casper client and the basic application. So this is your kind of image that you deploy to all your machines or all your clients. And again, we're just focusing on external apps. So everything in this case for the external apps starts with a tweet. At the time, I was working with a professor who does a lot of social network analysis, so I was looking at the Twitter API and how it interacts with Python, and I thought it would be kind of cool of having one place you can go to see all the new versions or all the current versions of the software that we deal with. And it would be kind of neat to have it through Twitter because everyone in the community can subscribe to that feed and they can see all the versions. So if you look at the tweets it has, and this happens twice a day, there's a timestamp of the platform. We are doing it for some of the applications on Windows, and that's why the platform is there. The application name, and then the version number, the current version number. And the way this is working, it's fairly basic. It goes to those websites and does some screen scraping and gets the version numbers, the current version numbers. So once that happens, that controller, that iMac that we have set up, generates this list from that Twitter feed and says, okay, the current version is Firefox 31.1.1, VLC is this. And it compares it to the inventory that the JSS has for that VM prototype. So in our case in here it notices that Firefox is older, it's an older version running on the client prototype. So at that point, it calls AutoPKG, and I know a lot of you are familiar with AutoPKG. The guys developing this stuff did an awesome job, so I don't know if any of them are in here, but thanks a lot for writing this stuff. So it calls AutoPKG to download the newest software version. Uploads it to your deployment share through using Casper admin, creates the policy in the JSS, spins up the VM, and I'm using one of the Python modules called Fabric. It does go through SSH into that VM, checks the new policies, sees what new software are available, runs a screen capture, and sends the email. So that's this. Now, since I still, I think, have your attention, the one last thing I wanted to talk to you about was this idea of DevOps and programming and the notion of programming or be programmed. So the last couple of days, we've seen a lot of automation. People have automated server builds, automated some application updates. There's a lot of this stuff going on, and some of those presentations were very interesting. Which raises the question, do I need to go back and learn how to code? Is that what I need to do at this point in my career? And I think the answer is absolutely not. And the reason I say this is because I think the paradigm is slowly shifting. So I think what we need to do is we definitely need to go back to our environments, assess how things are working. Even if something's been working for the past 5 years, I think it's time for us to revisit those tasks, workflows, and figure out how we can integrate some of this automation that we've seen. Work with the server teams, see what type of configuration management tools they're using, Chef, Puppet, Ansible, Salt, and see how we can integrate those into our workflows. That's the one thing. The second thing that kind of came about is in the keynote on Tuesday, there was this notion of, and there was a slide showing Apple and the intersection with the enterprise. And Chip mentioned that we are the enterprise. Personally, I disagree with that notion. The way I see it is that Apple is actually the enterprise. So Apple managed throughout the years to go in, come into our environments, come into our institutions, and grab the users and get the users' attention. And the way they did that is, and they figured it out way back when they actually introduced the I in iMac, I for individual. They started talking to those individuals. At the time, we were still talking to departments. We looked at it as marketing, HR. They looked at it as, no, this is Amy in marketing. This is not just marketing. And that's how they won those users over. And if some admins might disagree with that notion, and they kind of start opposing that, they look at it as, well, no, I'm just going to treat the Mac as any other machine, just like I used to manage Windows. I'll figure out the tools for managing Macs. I'll introduce those into the environment, and we go from there. I think we'll be missing out by doing this, because once we accept the notion that Apple is the enterprise, we start truly understanding the bond that Apple creates when a user unboxes the machine. That's the first contact that Apple has with their users. And that experience is something that they don't want us to be in the middle of. So our role, if we accept this notion, is to make this truly smooth, to be out of the picture as much as possible. So when you look at a new program, like some of you have heard about, DEP, or the Device Enrollment Program, that's exactly why it's there. Apple wants us to have the ability to actually configure machines, but at the same time, they want to create that bond with their users. They don't want us to unbox machines and handle those machines and then give them to the users. And if you kind of continue thinking along those same lines, you also start realizing another thing, and that is, it's not about device management or user management anymore. At this point, our role in this new world is actually curating that end user experience. It's figuring out, since those are not our users anymore, they're Apple users, is figuring out how can we seamlessly integrate all our systems with the machines or with the users that are coming into our environment. How can we talk directly to Amy in HR and figure out how to help her best do her job? So the idea becomes, how can we figure out to give Amy what she needs before she even thinks that she needs it? So if she has a meeting to kick off a new project, we have to figure out what applications is she going to need, what printers, what room she's going to be in, provide all that information to her seamlessly, all the time being context aware of where Amy is and what she needs. And I think if we succeed in doing that, that's when we actually succeeded in providing the proper experience and we understood that new paradigm shift. That's all I had to say. So thank you very much. So any questions? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. You can shout. I think I can try and repeat it.
My question is, so
It's actually already available on GitHub.
Okay. And we can get them with that link?
Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? No question? Cool. Thank you very much.